And we're live.
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Coming in hot with another episode of Morning Ritual, our TTRPG talk show. Hi, I'm one of your hosts, Anita. And you'd figure after 2 years, we'd have a handle on things, but we sure don't. Down here is...
What's up, motherfuckers? It's no...
Why did you mute yourself? This is an 18-plus stream.
Oh. What's up, motherfuckers? It's no... It's because, like... Honestly, it's because I'm on my Pokemon Go Twitch account. And so, like, I always go family-friendly mentally when I'm on that account. So, yeah. My bad.
And
what am I doing? Oh, right.
We're doing a talk show.
I forgot where I was.
You're all good. You're fine. You're in several different places at the same time, and that's okay.
Oh, what a mood.
We've got an amazing guest for you today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Do I have to?
A little bit, at least. Just
enough
to sate the audience, so that way they don't mark off the free space on the bingo card. I'm trying to get the intros out of the way super early.
That's fine. My name is Anita and TheNoirEnigma. My pronouns are he, him. You can catch me online at WerewolfFeels. That's the best way to figure out who the hell I am. Otherwise, I'm just the ghost that haunts you at night. You hear that, Jim? It's time.
All right. So, let's get into the episode. I don't know what's wrong with me today. I'm off my game. So let's talk about some of the projects that you're in right now.
Oh, good lord, what am I on?
Yeah, what are you on?
It's a good question.
There's like a really cool Starfinder game that you're in.
Oh yes, I'm in the Adam list. TTR Starfinder actual play and podcast. The actual play version is on Mom O'Brien's Twitch channel or on our YouTube. But we do a podcast version, which I think is the best way, I would argue, to engage with it if you're the person who likes, audio, because we edit the hell out of it. And I say we, I don't edit. It's my I have many skills in this life, I am blessed. Not editing.
I'm teaching myself video editing, and it is a skill.
It is, and it takes a lot of work. Other than that, I'm in a middle place where, technically speaking, I'm under NDAs about several projects, but also I've also finished the work on all those projects, so I'm doing nothing.
So you're just like waiting for them to come out and be announced.
Genuinely, people are like, "What are you up to?" for months, and I keep on saying, I wish I could say anything.
I tell you, but I'd have to kill you.
Yeah, well, I tell you where they killed me. Look, the blood god demands sacrifice, and I'm not the one dying today. My depression is not that bad.
What's that like? Oh no, I'm just kidding. No, like I have to say I am a fan of the Adam list. That's one of what I believe is one of the best actual plays out right now.
Thank you.
And I'm jealous that you're in it. I want to be in it.
We're getting to a place where we are considering the idea of guests. I think we've openly said that on the Patreon. Do we have a guest? I can't talk about that, but we do. We have a whole side campaign set in Saga before the events of the Adam list going on right now. So,
and it's a hell of a cast. You guys have Bree. Big Bree fan.
I'm a huge Bree fan too. Friend of mine. Kappa's also on it. Connie, Gabe.
Yep.
Yeah, that's an all-star cast right there.
You guys got heavy hitters on that one.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Honestly, I just look at that group and think, why weren't they the main cast? What am I doing here? What are any of us doing here?
I also have to ask, how do you like Starfinder? Because I'm a big proponent for Pathfinder. I've got no idea what the hell Starfinder's about. Oh, I've got the hiccups real bad.
Bless you, I guess. Starfinder's I like it a bit better than Pathfinder, and I like it a bit better than Pathfinder because there's not you can't keep going. You know how in Pathfinder, you do an attack and they say, hey, why don't you do a second one at -5? I want you to do a third one at -10, and I'm tempted because I'm me to do that,
right?
Right? Starfinder's snappier. It's a bit quicker in the rounds, but its basic system is the same. If you're familiar with D&D, it's similar. One of the biggest things is that the saving throws are like there's 3 less saving throws. There's a willpower one, a
Mhm.
reflex one, and a insert the
Willpower,
last one here.
reflex, and
What?
I know this because I actually play in a Starfinder game as well.
Is it a con
No,
save?
fortitude.
No. Fortitude.
Same as 3.5.
Yep.
So like there's some quality of life changes from your typical D20 system, which are for the better, I'd argue. But beyond that, the one thing is that there's 2 different armor classes.
Yeah,
Like you get 2 different armor
there's your
classes.
kinetic armor class, and then there's your regular armor class.
Yeah. That's weird, but the rest of it's pretty good. If you like strategy and D&D isn't giving you that itch, obviously the Finder games are for you. But when it comes to Pathfinder versus Starfinder is snappier. It's a bit quicker. It's a bit, more pick up and play.
It strikes a balance between Pathfinder 1E and Pathfinder 2E. It was a system that they made in between the two, so you can actually tell the progression. Like, you're like, some of these mechanics are going to be used in 2E, and some of these mechanics are definitely 1E, but, like, they're, like, that sort of transitional phase.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the Finder games before they even knew what a Finder game could be, is what I would say.
I play a human mystic in mine who's like this little old lady who joined a cult and got superpowers.
Oh God, so, lucky. Can you imagine actually having a cult work out for you?
Everybody else died, but she's okay.
Outside
That
of
sounds
that,
like a cult.
it does sound like a cult. It does sound like a cult.
Cults tend to benefit like one or 2 people.
I don't think it was intentional.
Oops, I won the cult.
I got the 1 glass of water in Jonestown.
Jesus!
Drink the Kool-Aid. They said, well, mine had no Kool-Aid.
They ran out before I got to the punch bowl.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm going to hell for that. I'm sorry. That was bad.
Yeah, you are. You going to double hell, the gasoline trials.
Children, this is a reminder that if you are a child, maybe don't be here. Just a thought. Tell your mommy or daddy to turn off the television.
Nah, kids, look up Jonestown. It's a fun audio. No, I'm kidding.
No! No!
You will learn about it one day, just in a different setting than this, I should hope.
With less laughter, because
Yeah,
it's not funny.
I need to do some penance to that one. That was a TTRPG sin right there.
I mean, it's not just a TTRPG sin. I think that's like,
That
the
was just a
topic of
human sin.
it's a human sin because like the reason why making fun of cults is kind of important sometimes is because 1, it is so easy to get indoctrinated into a cult, and 2, cults and religions have a lot in common. There has significant things in difference. I'm religious, for those who don't know. There's some significant differences, but there's some things in common, so it's worthwhile to point those out just in case you think, oh, this shit's normal. Some of this shit isn't normal. God,
Yeah.
cults kill people.
I mean, it's wild how I feel like cult mentality is also prevalent in social media, because some people are, the way they back brands and influencers, it feels very cult-like to me.
I cannot blame you for feeling that.
Like in certain games as well, like, you know, I feel like everybody that plays Minecraft is part of the Minecraft cult, and that's one of the ones I just don't get.
I don't play Minecraft.
Me either. It feels very culty.
My FYP on TikTok has tried to like start feeding me Minecraft content because I watch those videos where it's like am I the asshole, but it's the repost, but they use like a Minecraft, like they're jumping from block to block, so it tickles the good part of my brain. So it makes me engaged because I'm doing 2 things at once. I'm watching this thing while they're telling me a story. And so it's like, you like that has Minecraft in it, so you like Minecraft, right? And I'm like, no, I don't like Minecraft. I like when people jump from place to place. It reminds me of car rides when I was a kid.
I'm not gonna lie to you. Most of my TikTok is like half naked men.
Most of my TikTok, half naked people.
Yeah, that's a thing. It's a thing. Although it gets into weight loss content real easy. But you are right, by the way. You are right in that this industry, I've been thinking about it over the past couple days because I've been staying away from, if you're wondering why I'm not checking my DMs and why I'm tweeting like 3 times a day, just so you know, most of those are scheduled because this shit's been really triggering for me.
That's valid.
Yeah. E- but it's like I've been thinking about it, and the more I think about it, the more I'm certain that yeah, this is getting to the point where we're all engaging in some very light and dark thinking. Not all of us, but like we as a community are doing that, and it's really really dangerous because we have started deifying people, and we've had every single time one of these things has happened, we have deified someone. We've like put them up, we've celebrated them, we've told them, everyone around us, that they are the best people known to humanity. And when they inevitably fail us, we look for another guiding star to fill that void, right? Because now our whole lives have been crushed by the incidents, like the incidents of one or person or group. It's
I
it's
mean, it
also the yeah.
no, it kind of makes me think of the current situation we have going on with oh fuck, I'm forgetting the name.
Wormwood.
Yeah, that's the one.
Content warning, folks.
Yeah, it's.
Let's not talk about the events, I think, but no, yeah, you're right.
I mean, I'm not gonna go into it too deep. It's just like it's in this space. It's like, you know, the top of the top is granted a lot of leeway, and then ultimately, to quote my sibling, blue hair McWhite boy always ends up exposing themselves in the end, and it's a constant. Like, I don't think we've gone a month without some brand or influencer having not fucked up.
It's and the degree changes too, and I think the reason why is when you put someone on that pedestal and you shine the light of the world upon them, it is hard from that perspective to realize how many missteps you've made until you've straight up fallen off the pedestal altogether. And then the fall from grace is occurring. It is too late to fix anything. And I think about that a lot when it comes to people like who who else should I'm not going to mention names, but like there's certain people, and not just the blue hair white boys, who have experienced a pattern of behavior, and you're like, how did no one call them out? And the answer is people did, but because of the light that was being shined upon them, because people were still working with them, even though the rumors are abound, and there are people in the industry like that right now, where we all know the rumors, but we're still
Yeah,
working with them because they hold a position of power, and that means the light's shining on them. So every single time someone tells them you are fucking up, they can ignore them that much easier until eventually the fall from grace occurs. And I think so many more people, as unfortunate as it is, in the higher echelons of the industry, the biggest names you could think of, are closer to the edge of that platform than both they and us as a community think. And
yeah,
it's not entirely their fault at this point, because we have pushed them to be our morality system. We have made them our guiding star. We have deified them as demigods of the space. And in doing so, we have set themselves up for a Greek tragedy. And don't get me wrong, fucking love Greek tragedies. Really do. I'm a sucker for that shit. Half of the books up here are just straight up plays. But I mean, actually, you know what was a great example? I've been thinking about tweeting this for ages, but it's gonna kill me. Critical Role is actually a really good example. Not because I think they're terrible people. I do not. In fact, I have heard so many rumors about those people, and the majority of them, fantastic. And that's why I'm going to say them. Because every single time they have fucked up, does any of the critique actually reach them? And the answer is it's a bit 50-50, because their community will shield them with light about how wonderful they are, how terrific they are, how they are the best people in the industry, and they are doing their best. The Marquette situation didn't need to happen. And in fact, has been called out before Marquette, before like we ended up with a bit of a
whole
bit of a
campaign with
colonialist.
it.
Yeah, we've been talking about, hey, this feels appropriated for a while as people of color in the industry, but they couldn't hear it or couldn't see it because they're being blinded. They're being forcibly blinded. and that's not entirely their fucking fault.
True.
Right. That's there's so much nuance here. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, the way people cape for some, for like, look, I mean, sticking on Critical Role specifically, the way people cape for them,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot. Like, it's like, y'all relax. Like, everybody fucks up. Like, just let's acknowledge that this was a fuck up. And I mean, I think that particular fan base has a hard time accepting that. Like, right now, one of the things that a lot of folks are talking about is like, okay, we've got the official announcement that the Mighty Nine are going to get their own cartoon a la Vox Machina.
Yeah.
And so the question is Marisha going to play Bo? And I think that's a valid question to ask. I think it's a valid concern to have. And I've already seen conversations like, well, it's her character, so she should play the character. And it's just like, well,
that's a very good point. And I don't think there's a clear answer on that one, because we as a community, as like, not just professionals of the TTRPG industry, because just fuck that for a second, but as like you and I specifically, sorry, Anita, but
no, you're good.
People of color who consume content, we don't have a set answer for that just yet. We've been thinking about it, and we're close to saying yes, maybe hire a person of color. And I think as a group of people who watch media, that is a genuine thought, but we're still not 100% on it sometimes. And I think this is one of those cases where we're not really 100% just yet, but we cannot have the discussion at all because we are being shut down aggressively by Critical Role fans. And this is not, that's the best thing about Critical Role, actually. I want to say this for a second. The reason why we can do this is because Critical Role, as in the people who make up the business, are not terrible people, or at least to our knowledge are not terrible people. There's a reason why we're not having this discussion about Wormwood versus Teen Phoenix, because I cannot handle that. I mean, I could, but like you as an audience probably don't want to deal with that. Critical Role, at least, they're pretty good people as far as we can tell. So it's good that we can have conversations at all. The difficulty is, like, when you love someone, when you truly like them and they like their content, love their content, you still got to disassociate from them a little bit, because otherwise they are never going to grow. And that's what really pisses me off about it, because yes, there are going to be shitty. This is not to say there's no shitty people in the industry and they will not fall all on their own. Of course they will. But what if Critical Role does fall? If it does, genuinely speaking, I'm of the opinion that it's going to be because they weren't given the opportunity to repair their mistakes in an appropriate setting, because no one can call them out without getting tons and tons of angry tweets at them. And that's not entirely, of course, the community's fault. There was a bad actor previously in the community, but still. Yeah, it also applies to Not, who is a goblin, who is a halfling of color.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think the reason why we don't talk about Not as much is because most people, when they think of Not, they still think of the goblin version of Not. Yeah. I'll be honest, that still has issues because of how goblins are portrayed. But
yeah, that, and it's very much, I've seen the trans community kind of take to the story of Not, because it's very it has a lot of the cards of experiences that they have, like, feeling that you're in the wrong body. And like, I've seen some very thoughtful pieces on that. And it's just, I think part of the problem is like, Critical Role fans, I feel like, are majority white. And it's going to take a lot of empathy and maturity to understand what I'm trying to say right now. But white people will never know what it feels like to have accurate and good representation of your culture on the screen, because they have had the privilege of being default. So like, like, it's very, like, as a black man, it's very easy for me to tell when a black character is being written by a white person. There's a disconnect there that it's hard to quantify in words. It's more of a feeling. But like when Black characters are written by Black folks, it hits different. Like it hits in a major way. And for little brown girls watching, the Vox Machina cartoon, there's gonna be that disconnect. Like I get that Bo is Rish's character, like, and not only that, but she is a brown LGBTQA plus member, which I don't. I don't feel, I don't understand. I still to this day don't understand why Rishi chose to do that. Like I would love to just straight up ask her, like, why? Like what about that was necessary for Bo? Like why did you make that choice? What is that choice rooted in?
There's a bunch of answers that could be asked. Marisha Ray, if you're watching this, you're not. But if you're watching this, someone send her the clip. But if you're watching this, honestly, I had the same question. I would love for you to appear on this show, even though I cannot be here probably, and like,
yeah, as well,
talk about the decisions you made, because the best case situation is that it was made with a lot of empathy. This realization that, hey, we've been very white so far. Maybe we should consider talking about differences. And maybe Bo wasn't intended to be a person of color. She was intended to be a different kind of white person, but we'll never know. Right. And I think whether or not, whatever the answer is, that's the problem. That's the reason why we're not hearing it, because as a community, it's just going to turn into a flame war, and everyone in that company knows it.
Yeah.
Whereas if we had a bit more space, if we didn't, and this is the dark part of the light and dark thinking. I'm not using black and white thinking because I don't like that phrase. But this is the dark part of the dark and white thinking. If you make a single mistake, especially someone in Marisha's position, congratulations, you are now central character on twitter.com for as long as Elon allows us. And we're going to rip you down without considering the fact that, how you made a mistake. And don't get me wrong, I think there's amazing people in this community, in this industry. I can think of many. VJ, you, myself, all of us who pretty much talk about it incessantly. Issa, who's Evil Clever Dog on Twitter, who was one of the people who talked about Marquette. We're not approaching this from a place of dark thinking. We're approaching this from a place of empathy, always. But there's a good amount of the community that will say, no, let's think about darkness instead. And that makes me fear. I wish I could tell people like Marish to come on and be open. There's no consequences, but there is. Ultimately, I think Bo and Not, they both tell stories that involve a person of color, but in my experience watching what little of the Mighty Nine I have not watched the most recent campaign, they don't feel like people of color. Because you're right. I think one of the ways in which a lot of brown characters get that happens is that we have other cultural roots as well. We're not wholly Western, in the West.
Right.
And we tend to lose that the moment we're portrayed or written by a white person. Or either that, or when we point out our own culture, it's from a place of anger and hypocrisy, neither of which is good. Like, one of the biggest ways in which I, as a person, exist, I never was told to believe in a nuclear family when I grew up. In fact, I didn't have one. My grandfather was just as much my parent as my mother and my father. No one who is not of an immigrant nature, I think, would understand how that develops.
The idea of a multi-generational family is not a common concept in Western culture, for sure.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, I fully agree with what you're saying, and I think one of the things that's so frustrating about this situation in particular is that when a white person makes the decision that I'm going to play a brown skinned person, like for whatever there may be good reason, good cause for it. But what you have to understand is that when you make that decision, especially in this instance, Bo's skin color doesn't carry with it any meaning. There's nothing in the story that changes if Bo is a white girl. And the thing is that may be like, because in this world everything is okay, like we don't have to worry about racism. But what you don't understand is, like, if you're hopping into our skin without any of the consequences and you picked it because it's a cool aesthetic, it's kind of a slap in the face, because it's like, I get to have the cool parts of your experience, and I'm going to ignore all of the baggage and burden that comes with it every day. Like, if somebody were to play like a black dude and like they have an interaction with the guard, which is just normal. Like, me as a black guy, I wish to God that was the case, but it's not. No. And it's just like, my life experience is not a cool aesthetic. It's something that I have to deal with every day, and you don't get to just cherry pick the aspects of our lives that you think are neat and nifty. Like, that's kind of the problem we have with white folks, is they keep taking the cool parts of our fucking life in our culture, and they're the cause of all the hard part of our life in our culture. And it's just like, what the absolute like,
I'm with you. I think it's actually, and this has got tons of nuance to it. Like, this is the reason why I'm actually okay with this. Is going to be a hot take, and I'm going to get canceled now. I'm here to be canceled, everyone. This is
all right. Let's
plan from the start.
I'm riding the twit longer. Let's go.
Yeah. I'm actually okay with Marisha Ray voicing Beauregard, because not anything is going to make Beauregard feel like a person of color to me from a character perspective beyond her art, except like a rewrite. And I know they're not going to do that. And a voice actor is not going to change much. It just means that when we find the character, like, as people of color, non-relatable or bland, we're going to blame that actor instead of the writing. I don't want to do that, so I'm okay with Marisha Ray playing Beauregard.
Honestly, I 100% support your hot take for two reasons. One, I do not want to put a person of color, especially if they choose to get an LGBTQA plus person of color, in the position of voicing Bo, because the hate that voice actor is going to get, no matter what the performance comes out as, the level of hate that person is going to get is going to be absolutely unbearable. So I do not mind if Marisha voices the character. However, I feel as though the community is owed a conversation so we can at least understand the decisions that these players made in making that choice. I understand that from a business perspective, putting your finger in your ear going la 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 la, business as usual, is probably going to be what Critical Role does. It's the smart choice business wise and professionally. However, that decision, I feel, is an absolute slap in the face to the messaging that they have been trying to present since day one of everybody love each other, everybody be cool. Like, a line has been crossed. Like, let's just keep it a buck. A line has been crossed. I feel as though at least a conversation where she goes, here's where my head was when I made this character. Here's why I made that choice. I don't even need an apology. I just want to understand why. Because if there was no thought put into it, where it was just like, yeah, I'm gonna just play a brown skin queer person, like that is more offensive to me than a white person going, here's why I made her
choice.
A PLC and queer. If there's at least some thought behind it, I might not like the taste of it, but it's still the medicine I feel we need.
Mm-hmm. Then I think what Critical Role's been trying to do is they've been trying to repair things on the back end without necessarily dealing with things on the front end. And I think reiterating what you said,
they're fixing the foundations when the house is on fire.
Yes, but I want to reiterate something that Noir said. The smart play right now, as a business, as a industry titan, is to do that. It's not to admit fault or do anything that could be perceived like admitting fault. It's not what I would want. And this is a case, so to take this to sensitivity consulting that I also do, this has happened multiple times where I'm dealing with a product and I say, okay, I need to have a conversation with you about this thing. And this thing is a big thing. Maybe a smaller thing, maybe a bigger thing, but a pretty important thing. And I'm like, hey, I need you to change this. Or I want you to change this. And in my head, the entire time I am thinking, and this actually happens when I'm giving people accessibility options, when I'm like, these things would help you make things accessible. I'm thinking in the back of my head, no one has the budget for this. They're not going to say yes. The answer is going to be no. I'm not recommending it because I think it's likely. I wish I could be in a position where I would. That is never the case when it comes to certain situations. I'm suggesting it because it needs to be suggested. Yeah. This is one of those cases where I do not think Critical Role is going to take the suggestion. I do think it is worthwhile to make it a suggestion at all. However, because they're clearing things up on the back end, I think that's how we ended up with Marquette in general, where you had a bunch of white folks telling a story set in a Swana South Asian place, and doing so entirely as a group of outsiders, with the exception of, I think, 2 of those characters, but it didn't really feel like it, because there's no Swana or South Asian people at all represented in the cast. And people, when we did that, people were like, well, when you were angry about Bo, didn't you say don't represent people that aren't you? Because again, we have been discussing this before, but it went off without comment from Critical Role at the time.
Right.
And the answer is, when you're playing from a place, the answer, like when you're in a place that is predominantly dominated by influences of color, it's a different story. And we missed all that nuance because we couldn't have the conversation way back when. So we're still here. And I think that's the thing, because Critical Role fans, the deepest of your fans, by the way, if you're watching this and you're a Critical Role fan, you're thinking, oh, fuck, I apologize. However, I don't think they want to be here either. Straight up, I don't think they want to be. But the problem is, if you don't want to be here, mate, if you don't want to be constantly talking about this, and I get it, I'm a fan of Star Wars. Sorry, Bria. You gotta let us have the conversation openly and honestly the first time, because that's how we don't end up here again. And that's the difficulty.
Yeah, and they have the platforms and the means to have this discussion, and it's a discussion that needs to be had. To some extent, I feel for Critical Role because they have the biggest platform, and so that puts them in the position of having. It's not just what Critical Role does; it's how they do it and when they do it that they have to answer for. In the midst of campaign 2 starting, it was a pretty common criticism that there were no people of color on the cast of what is the biggest TTRPG actual play of all time around that time.
Yeah.
And so the decision to play a person of color in the absence of having a person of color on the cast, it may not have been the intention, but one of the things that white folks need to understand about the lives of people of color is that white folks have a tendency, when they're being aggressive or racist at us, they don't say the things directly. So so we're always on guard, we're always looking, because it's paying attention that keeps us safe. So it's not exactly what you say, it's when you say it that we pick up on. Yeah. And it's very easy for many TTRPG fans that are people of color to have seen the decision from Marisha to play a person of color as, here's your representation, shut the fuck up. Now that might not have been the intent, but that is the message.
It doesn't negate the impact.
Right. Like, it's the best way that I can explain it is that if I'm driving and a white guy is driving and a cop is following both of us, my experience and that white guy's experience are going to be a lot different. Mm-hmm. Not because of the actions of the cop, but because of the experience of the driver. For the white guy, oh great, this might be a nuisance to my day. For me, I need to be on my P's and Q's or I might get shot. Now that cop might be a good guy and he might just be going the same direction as me. But my experience is valid in the sense that best case scenario, he turns left, I keep going, my day is fine. Worst case scenario, I get shot. I have to be prepared for either one of those realities and act accordingly. That is the nuance that is missing when a white person decides, I just want to try on being brown. Like, you're missing the meat of the experience because you never have to think of it.
Yeah, no, I have a similar relationship with cops. It's not been good. As in, not in just it, as a person of color, as a Muslim, as literally as me, I've had bad relationships with cops. But also one of the best examples that because I'm going to be doing it soon. I'm going to PAX East, for those who don't know. Whether or not I'm actually on the panel that they told me I'm on, I'm going to be there. Whenever I go to an airport and I'm going through security, not even crossing a bloody border, but going through security, I seize up inside, and I have to do everything in my power to pretend like I'm not, because that in itself is suspicious. But I know I've been put through extra security the majority of times I've been through. I have people looking at me twice the majority of times I've been through. I have customers and like other people on the flight who stare at me. And I know that, and I have to go through life knowing that, because even in the best case scenario, and I take my flight and I end up where I want to and everything's fine, I know in my heart that even if it's a fluke, the chance of the fluke happening to me is much higher than it is to a white person for a multitude of reasons. And that's, even if you're not like intending to put us on as skin, even if you're not like, this is my performance of a brown person, snap, snap, snap. Even if you're doing it from an example, like the best case example, where you look around, you see a bunch of white people and you're like, I want to make sure that this group, this campaign group feels supportive and feels diverse. And you're approaching it from that space. It is still using our appearance as an aesthetic because you are missing the nuance of who we are. And that is why Bo is a flashpoint right now. And that is why Marquette is a flashpoint for CR3, and why, unless things drastically change, CR4 is going to have a similar situation, as much as I hate to admit it, because until we like have this discussion openly, and I mean openly beyond just the three of us on a call, I mean as an industry,
Yeah.
we're not going to get to a place where our side is not constantly on the watch, because we have been represented poorly before. You Joy and you really handled the Neo Nights from perspective, huh? Over the holidays. But also, the other side is not going to approach this from a point of understanding where we're coming from until they sit down at the table, listen to us, and say, okay, that's what you go through. Not that is your perspective. Not, oh, I didn't realize that. And definitely not, I'm sorry. I don't want to hear I'm sorry. But that is what you go through. How do we move forward? Till we get to there.
And how do we move forward when we're already on a back foot, right? Because that's, I think, the damning part about Critical Role at this point is because they were 2 seasons in, and then the conversation about having an all-white table came in, and then that the next season passed, and it's still not enough. And at what point do they realize, oh shit, we need to actually start working to fix this problem, right? Because they started off on that back foot already, and they've just been trying to play catch up at this point, and at a certain point it's not going to be enough, right?
I mean, yes, and the reason why we're so forgiving there's actually something I want to issue here. We had this issue in CR1. We pretended we didn't out of respect for the situation with Orion, who was a person of color at the table, and Orion left. We don't need to discuss why. But we respected that, and we're like, okay, this is a table full of white people now. But they're white people by circumstance, not necessarily by choice.
Right.
Understood. And then they brought on guests, and the majority of those guests were white. And we were like, okay, this is Geek and Sundry, right? We get it. But there is a point at which that forgiveness and understanding can only go so far, because it comes with the hope and the unspoken demand, if we're being honest, that you will do better. That's why CR2 hits such a discordant chord. It is not because, oh, we didn't realize it. It's because we were being forgiving. And when we are forgiving and we see no results back,
you give grace and none is given back in return.
Yeah.
And again, to me, it comes back to dog whistles. And you brought up a really, really keen point, which is like in campaign 1, they brought on a lot of white guests.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, the dog whistle behind that, and again, here, listen, I respect the burden of everybody, and I try to be empathetic. And the burden of white folks is that there are many in your number that don't think the way that you think. However, they can assign their thoughts to your actions if you are thoughtless. So while you might not be meaning to present the principles and ideals of people that you find to be despicable, you can inadvertently, through ignorance, inaction, or laziness, be propagating their same beliefs. And having white guest after white guest sends out the dog whistle that, hey, maybe POCs just ain't as good as us. Maybe there isn't anyone worthy of the seat. Now, I think this is why I love Dimension 20 so much, because if you look at Dimension 20, the all-stars of that show are generally the people of color. Like, I can't show anybody Fantasy High and not have them lose it over, Zach or Lou.
Are you my dad?
I'm just saying that when you bring people of color, it changes things. Like all of Lou's characters are black, and they feel black, and there's something special about them because of that. Like Kingston Kingston's story couldn't be played by a white person pretending to be black.
Not
Just
the depth it was.
Exactly. And we talked to Brennan, and Brennan Brennan broke down like when we were doing, Kingston's family, and he had to play black NPCs. He didn't take that lightly. They had full-on conversations about black culture, black slang, why we talk the way we do, why we do the things we do, and you can see that in those interactions.
There's care and attention that's placed.
There's care and attention, and it's not just an aesthetic. It's a part of that character's life, and the reason that is so special is going back to your experiences at airports. What white folks, if there's one thing that I hope sticks, if you're watching this, is that we people of color have far more experience pretending to be white than you have pretending to be us, because we have to pretend to be like you to survive. You get to pretend to be like us because you think it's cool. And that's the crux of the issues. You're doing something that we do to survive for shits and giggles. And you might not have meant that as an insult. You might just go, I think black folks are neat. So I watch Shaft and Soul Plane, and I want to emulate that experience at the table.
Shaft and Soul Plane.
Listen, man.
No, but yeah.
It's just like, it's complicated. It's very complicated.
My apologies for one thing, because I realized that I've done the exact same thing I did last time I came out, where I was like, let's get into the dark topics now.
And I'm so sorry to interrupt, but Ryan quit. Ryan goes, not Souls Plane. And in my head, that's just a mixture of Demon Souls and Soul Plane. And I've never wanted anything more in my entire life.
Souls Plane.
Look, I love it. To change the topic slightly, but to go off of something you said before, I tweeted about this recently, and I'm going to expand the tweet a little bit, where I'm like, hey, don't invite POC to sit around with you, tell some stories. Invite POC to tell specific stories that you couldn't have thought of with your platform, because that's the other thing, right? Like from push aside this topic of CR for a little bit. When we go on something, when Lou goes on something, Lou's character is inherently black. Lou could have played a white boy, and probably very fantastically. Lord knows we've all done it. But I played white people a couple times. Sorry to steal your culture, but I will again. But the difference is, like, when you're given permission to tell your, like, a specific story to you, I do that on the Atom list. You end up with something so much cooler because we're not flattening ourselves to fit you. We're being celebrated instead. And I'm not going to say that every single time I've sat down a recording for any show, whether it be the Atom list or another show I've been a part of, I've been like, I feel great today, because life isn't like that. But I will say that whenever I get the chance to tell my part of the story, or talk about in the Atom list, like Azam's cultures, and how that interferes with who he is, I get the chance to be celebrated for that. And that is meaningful, because I am not a person who likes being flattened. And I think that's, once we get to the point where we're understanding, what a person of color can do beyond just representation, we're getting to a point of celebration. And that is better content for everybody. And it's not just people of color. Queer people, even if they're playing tieflings, people of marginalized identities like gender, people who are disabled like I am, I may be a cisgendered man, but actually not but, and there are stories that I'm not as equipped to tell as a marginalized gendered individual. I can tell similar stories and I can do them pretty well, but it's better if someone else is taking the charge on that story.
Yeah.
Right. To go on to the Adams, Azam comes from a place in which you don't decide your gender or even like your sexual characteristics until you go through puberty, because he starts off as a ball of lava, and develops all of his characteristics as he ages. So he chose.
That's so fucking cool,
right? Because he's an Efreet, and I thought, if I'm gonna make Efreet true aliens, let's make them wild and wacky. And I specifically, Starfinder really does this thing where it challenges the idea of magic versus science. So we had a lot of science going on, and I wanted to be like, okay, cool. I'm gonna make the Efreet as magical and as alien as I can at the same time. And I think it ended up with something cool, but I'm not taking the lead on the gender conversation.
right?
Azam isn't. Azam's obviously got stuff going on with his gender. He's not truly a cis man in the way I am, because he wasn't assigned something at birth. But I'm not the one leading the gender conversations.
Assigned lava at birth.
Assigned lava at birth. It's the marginalized, gendered folk who are leading the gender conversation. If Azam is a part of that, that's because he's invited to be a part of that. And that's a good thing, because though Azam was assigned lava at birth, the fact is, in his culture, it is normal to be assigned lava at birth. Everyone is assigned lava at birth. He does not understand the concept of being transgender or cisgender or non-binary, because those are just every one of those. There's no such thing as like
those are concepts that are for other people, not for Azam.
Which was important. I didn't want to be here and saying this is how everyone should view gender, because even though I've had my own gender journey as myself, there have been times in my life where I've been like, am I a man at all? Not for my own wishes. And that's a very deep, dark conversation. But even though I've had that, I am still assigned the gender I am at birth. I do not experience any marginalization on that front. When I go in and I'm like, hey, my gender is this, no one's going to look at me funny for it. Mm-hmm. Neither will Azam. No one questions his gender, and that's important, because that is not my story to tell, especially when I'm surrounded by some amazing folks, some amazing marginalized folks who are dealing with that conversation and doing so from a place of empathy and understanding. If they want to involve Azam, cool. I can take on that role. But that's something I get invited into, not something I claim for myself, no matter Efreet lore. That is, I think, what we're talking about when we're talking about, celebrating folks and not flattening them, and why it's important to have people at the table who can be celebrated in that manner and can tell those stories.
And I think that just hit the whole thing on the head was when you said that flattening people. And I think that's the key aspect that I think a lot of white folks miss when they play people of color in TTRPGs, is they are definitely flattening people of color down to just the base characteristics and aesthetic.
Yep.
I think you're touching on something very powerful here too, which is like it's very. I'm not trying to bring it back to Critical Role, I promise, but it kind of fits. When we talk about Marquette, it's very clear that there's some aspect of that of that culture that Matt is a fan of and is appreciative of. And I have been in that situation where it's just like, I see something from a people that aren't my own that I'm like, that's really cool, and I would love to incorporate that into my world building. One of the things, like in this is still very early on conceptually for me in my world building, is right now trans folks are under just the unprecedented level of attack right now in our government. And I empathize just as a Black person, because it's just like, oh, we've seen this before. It is like there are parts of the trans experience that I think are just truly unique to them and really fucking cool. And I appreciate it, and I want to bring it into my world building. That said, I don't have the right to just go, that's a cool thing that you guys do, I'm going to take that. I feel like if you're going to bring somebody's experience into your world building lore, you have a responsibility to reach out to them and go, hey, is this like how best can I represent this idea in the world that is respectful to your experience? Like, you know, listen, it's a lot more work.
Feedback too, to actively ask for that feedback and then listen to it and implement it.
Sorry to cut you off.
No.
Oh no, you're good.
I also cut you off, and I saw. Sorry. The Canadians in chat are popping out here. No. Sorry, we're gonna get to our cursive sorry loop if we're not careful.
And you're dealing with a Midwestern, and I'm right there with you. But just to finish off real quick, it's a lot more work.
Yeah,
but it's work that needs to be done. And if you are going to go to another culture and ask them, how best can I represent this? You know, here's the idea I have. You have to go into that conversation willing to accept someone going, oh shit, don't fucking do that. What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, you have to be ready to accept that, because it's not out of malice that you might have a bad idea. It might just be out of ignorance.
Yeah. You know what it is? This is the takeaway. Stop asking for permission. Start seeking invitation.
Boom!
That's the difference. And I think if I hadn't had this conversation with y'all, I would have never gotten here. God damn it.
There we go.
It's good to be back. But that's the difference, because permission means that you know that you're going to approach it wrong, but you want to forge through ahead anyway. Invitation is saying, hey, this is a topic I'd like to explore. Come and help me tell it. And tell me what you'd like from me. Yeah. Tell me how to tell this story.
Yeah, how best would you, how do I represent you in my world? Like, I think even coming in with your own idea, like, I think even coming in with your own idea might be the wrong way. Like, you might be like, this is where I was, this is what I was thinking. I am willing to scrap all of that. How do you want to be represented in this fantasy world? Like, if this world is brand new, baby fresh, we can change it however we want. In your ideal fantasy world, what choices would you like to have that aren't present in this one?
This is why we start off with the darkest of the dark roast whenever I'm here, because this is the good stuff.
This is like this is delicious.
Yeah.
Good conversations.
I'm very thankful y'all invited me back.
Of course.
Back last
Are you kidding
me? It's a beautiful thing when people celebrate you because they know you can tell something you cannot.
Right.
And it's a beautiful thing that, you know, you do approach it with, this is what I was thinking, because it's having ideas is not a bad thing, and it can provide inspiration to us, but you do so with the readiness to drop that at a hat, you know?
Hell yeah.
Anita, you've been quiet for a while.
Oh no, I'm cool. I'm just vibing. This is a great conversation. Y'all were talking about POC topics, and I know as a white person that without this background would blend into the color of the wall, I would firmly stay out of it. So I'm cool with that.
I respect that. I respect the desire to stay. Not the desire. I respect the respect it needs to say, I'm gonna take a step back.
That's exactly what I endeavor to do. I know that my best option in this point is to step back and listen, and then internalize. Yeah.
But sometimes it's also good to be like, oh, this is where I've made a misstep before.
Yeah.
How do I fix it? You know, that's what we're here for.
Exactly. We learn and we grow, and through that we listen and things.
You know, there's another side to this conversation which I kind of want to get to, which is like, there's of course the white person playing a person of color, but I'm sure at least some of us have had the experience of having a GM go, I want my world to be dark and gritty and realistic.
No.
And that's
Are we talking about Dark Sun now?
I'm not even familiar with Dark Sun. I was just gonna say, like, and that generally is, again, remember, we listen for dog whistles, not exactly what's said, but I don't. But when I hear, especially a white GM go, I want my world to be dark, realistic, gritty. I want there to be, like, racism and sexism, like all that kind of stuff. Like, to me, that is very much in the same vein of a white person trying to play a POC character. They want to introduce racism into their world, but they only have the experience of that from the perspective of white folks, which, like, it's very easy to imagine yourself being the guy holding the gun. It's what's more complicated is portraying the person that's been shot. So, like, it's just, to me, that is another red flag that I've seen, that I've played through, and I'm just curious if any of you guys have had that experience.
I can actually talk to a little bit of an experience. So last night, we did a new season of Growing of the Dim, and we're doing a Weird West campaign this time around, which is, and obviously at my table we've always got red lines on homophobia, transphobia, sexism, racism, like that's always never going to be in the content for my game. So what I do instead is, if there is a topic that I know that one of my players wants to explore, I give them the reins on how to explore that. So I had Chris, or Omnis X, is in my game, and he wants to explore, like, a little bit of the anger and he's playing, I can't spoil too much about his character right now, but he's playing an angry black man.
Right.
That's boiling it down to, like, the very basic level of it, but he's doing that thing where he wants to sort of explore that anger, but from a point of righteousness and from a point of, and so I just started off the session with him just asking, when was the first time that you felt that anger? And he answered with, when the fires burned just a little bit too long. So we can, like, glance over that topic, but I've given you the reins and you can steer into it as much or as little as you want.
Yes.
I like that.
Let's talk about emancipatory bleed for a second. Sorry, so one thing that's important to understand about me is the fact that I actually come from a life sciences background. I've studied acting, make no mistake, but I come from a life sciences background. So I read a lot of papers. I approach everything from a scientific perspective, whether I not I care to admit it, from the aspect of, the academia side of tabletop. There's a fantastic multidisciplinary artist and academic out there, Janai Kemper, who's a Black person, who studies LARP specifically and talks about emancipatory bleed. There's a whole paper on it. It's fantastic. You should read it. But emancipatory bleed is the concept of you are intentionally activating bleed to experience a kind of freedom that you would not in your day-to-day life. And that is the thing where when people are turning the racism grittiness into a dark and light issue, a dark and light issue, where they're actually missing the point a little bit as well, right? Sometimes you do want racism in your games so you can experience a form of emancipatory bleed to go against it. And
I'm never going to be the one that initiates it, though.
Exactly.
I'm going to let the players take the reins on that and take the lead on that.
Exactly, and that's why we're here. Is because ultimately white folks are leading, not Anita, but white folks are leading the conversation. So we can never have a conversation about, okay, when is it okay to have racism in the game? We instead have a conversation about why you have racism in the game. That fucking frustrates me because you're right, Noir. it's a red flag. And as a guy who does not mind a degree of racism in his games, so long as we are dealing with it with sensitivity, and so long as the majority of people leading this discussion are people of color, therefore the people undergoing it, you know, it's frustrating because I don't want this to turn into a dark issue where we don't discuss it at all, where it's no racism at all. Because if we do that, we miss out on a great part of tabletop, and we miss out on the ability to have our media represent reality in a way to combat against reality. In Missing Annie Lee, I played a queer person who was undergoing a lot of internalized homophobia. We didn't have homophobia being represented aggressively in our campaign at all. But I'm playing a person who's undergoing a lot of homophobia and therefore has internalized it and therefore isn't out. And that's the core concept of his character going forward. Until we start the second season, although the editing changes that. But we start the second season, and he's out now. He's got a boyfriend, totally different life. I could not tell that story if we wouldn't want to tackle homophobia at all.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's a weakness. It's a weakness to do that. Not if it's coming from the safety of the players. The safety of the players is like, I don't want to deal with homophobia. That's different. Mm-hmm. But if we as an industry say, I'd never want to discuss homophobia in games, we should never, ever, ever, ever have any homophobia in any actual play ever.
And I think the difference is the difference between using it as a scalpel or using it as a cudgel. It's using it as a point of discussion versus using it as a way to attack your players.
Or show how bad your world is. Or
show how bad things are, how dark and gritty and super hardcore things are.
Yes. I think I have a perfect example of like why this is such a red flag for me. And like, even if we're doing it cautiously, it still can be a little bit exhausting.
Of course.
Which is the example I'm going to bring up is Dragon Age Inquisition, which is one of my very, very favorite games. I cannot play an elf in that game. I can't do it. I've tried, and like, here's the issue I have with it, which is there are some plot lines in Dragon Age where it's just like you'll meet an elf that's just like sick of his shit. It's just like the elf is just like, I'm fucking like, if one more motherfucker calls me knife ears, I'm burning this whole motherfucker to the ground. And sometimes the game has a tendency to paint that particular character as like a bad guy, or if you lash out against experiencing something like that in the world, the game will go, oh, that's a bad action. Like you took the bad moral choice there. And again, that to me is, it's very easy to write the guy with the gun, very hard to write the guy being shot.
Because
and
they don't have that experience. Exactly.
Like it, to me, it's the difference of how people perceive the Black Panthers. To this day, there are still people that consider the Black Panthers a terrorist group, not bothering to read the history of that organization, not taking into context what they're dealing with. And like it in my enjoyment of fantasy, I don't want to feel like a bad guy for responding how in my soul I feel. Like they're in Dragon Age, again, one of my favorite games of all time.
Same here.
Fucking the persecution of mages, persecution of elves, to Venter slavery mentions just casually thrown back and forth. It's just like, I don't think the average white fantasy fan can ever truly comprehend what it's like to be a person of color that is a fan of fantasy, because there is so much that you just have to go, well,
Yes,
it
deal
is
with
what I guess this is part of it. Like,
it's no, like, I'm glad we're talking about Inquisition, because I want to talk about this publicly for so long, because there's several things about Inquisition that actually are borderline offensive to actually hurtful. One of the things about Inquisition, everyone compliments the shit out of Dorian Pavos, and that's a great story about homophobia. What people don't realize, unless you look like me, is that this is the first time a brown person has been ever, like, a person of my coloration has been depicted in a Dragon Age game. And he is depicted as being from the Tevinter backwater, where things are worse than actual Tevinter. To the point where people are like, you know what? It's because Dorian's family is from the backwater that he is so homophobic. Because in regular Tevinter, they don't do this. And everyone from regular Tevinter, from better Tevinter, is white.
where they have slaves.
Where they have slaves. And exactly. And I'm like sitting there, and I was playing through Dorian's story, and I kept on thinking, this feels like a hack job of my own personal existence right now. Like, it feels like someone is trying to mimic what they think of brown. And the truth is, it's written by a white gay man, David Gator, who's writing about his experiences as a white gay man. But by coloring it brown, it becomes offensive, because it becomes about how overly restrictive the brown people are compared to the white people. And he doesn't realize that.
Makes it a
because
whole
he's
lot
writing.
worse.
Exactly. Everyone wants me to love Dorian, and I want to love Dorian. Dorian fucking hurts me every single time, and I cannot stand it. I don't want to hate him, and I don't hate him. He's a character, and also I think there's great things about his character. I love how he fights, and he's continuing to fight. That's meaningful. But God, does his storyline make me feel attacked in a way I cannot explain. Right? And on your point, there's actually a great example in Dragon Age 2 of how we talk about Dragon Age 2, where, again, you're realizing the majority of the fans, the majority of the writers, they're all white, where Anders blows up the Chantry. And everyone talks about how Anders is killing innocents here. And I'm like, the woman who is the sole voice of reason in the city, and who literally controls, technically speaking, the Templars, even if it's only in a technical sense, is not standing up for the crimes she knows the Templars are committing. She is not an innocent. The Chantry is never innocent, but she specifically, no matter how nice she is, or how patient she is, or how kind she is choosing to try and be Switzerland in a situation where people are actively being persecuted, and she knows it. She's not only not an innocent, she's a collaborator. She's allowing this to happen. That's why Anders blows her up, and that's handled relatively, from his perspective, kind of sensitively. I don't think it's done as well as it should be, but somewhat sensitively. But the way we talk about it isn't. Because,
I'm so sorry to cut it. You're perfectly describing what I think is my itch with Dragon Age, which I love the franchise, I love the games, but here's the itch. The itch is I can't solve any of the problems that are a problem to me because I'm POC.
Yep.
Like, to me, ending the blight, closing the portals is as important as liberating the slaves of Tevinter and stopping the oppression of elves. And the game consistently goes, no, that's just part of the world. Here, save this world, but don't fix it. That's what's wrong with it.
Even on a small level, like Dragon Age 2, technically speaking, is about ending the tyranny of Kirkwall. You still don't get to the point where you're allowed to say, the reason why we are here is the Templars, and it's the Templars who are the problem. You were never given the option to say there is no more Templar order in Kirkwall. Even if that causes even if that were to do what they originally had the expansion doing, where someone calls a divine march. There was supposed to be an expansion called Dragon. I forget what it was supposed to be called, because the game itself is supposed to be called Exodus, which it should have been. Much better name. And it's supposed to end in a divine march because the situation gotten so bad. Now we must send all the Templars to Kirkwall. Even if it had ended like that, because you had taken down the Templars forever in Kirkwall, that still would have been a more meaningful story. Because yeah, of course we cannot change the world's fabric, but we should be able to change where we are enough to fight back against the systems we see. Otherwise, what we are doing is we are missing the emancipation of the emancipatory bleed. We're just experiencing the bleed. We're not being emancipated. And if we're not being emancipated, sorry to use this phrase, but considering we're talking about Kirkwall, it's only fair. We are in bloody chains. Do you want your people of color audience, and other games do this with gender, sexuality, do you want your marginalized audience to be in chains? And usually the answer is, oh, fuck no. But people don't realize it because they give no choice for emancipation. And when it comes to gritty worlds, that is what it is.
Yeah. To me, it very much reads like you can be a hero and save the world. And yeah, racism, slavery are going to be part of the world. So we acknowledge that's bad, and we'll give you a few opportunities to go, racism and slavery are bad, but you're not going to be given an actionable choice to do anything about it. Like the fact that I can play an elf and save the world and not one time go, hey, so I'm at the point where I can beat the bad guy, and the bad guy is going to quite literally kill everybody. I'm not going to stop him until I see changes to how you treat elves and until Tevinter frees its slaves. Like, if I got that choice, I would take it in an instant.
And instead, what we're getting is Solus. So I keep on wanting to call him Solas because that he sounds better to me, but whatever. We have Solus being the only person standing up for the elves, and doing so by saying, I shall break the fabric of the world until elves rule everything again.
We're like gonna go in the exact opposite direction.
We're going to act like the white man. Which,
right.
Solus is such a white man. But we're going to act like the white man.
Thank you!
Thank
you!
That is it. That's the whole thing. That's the conversation. It's the if black people took over, they'd make us slaves conversation from white folks, because that's ultimately their deepest fear, right?
Yeah. Normally, like, I wouldn't get into this conversation. Although as an East African, I do see it. But it's like, it's not even being a Hotep. Solus isn't a Hotep. He is a step beyond. He's a
supremacist.
He's a supremacist. It's gross. It's so gross.
That being the figurehead of the elf revolution drives me fucking crazy. There's not one person that goes, listen, we don't want to take over. We want to be treated fairly and equally. What the fuck? Why is that not a thing?
Yeah.
That's the key mark of it actually being written by white people.
Well, look, here's the thing. People like Solus exist amongst people of color. To put a good example on it from my place, although, again, my parents were born in East Africa, not in India. But in India right now, there's a lot of Hindu supremacy going on. Straight up. There's like the main party in charge is the Hindu supremacist party. And you're seeing people of color co-ops like fucking Nazism to espouse hatred against Muslims and co-option of everything else into Hinduism. And it's gross as shit. Narendra Modi is the Solus of the equation. But the majority of us are not like that. The majority of us fighting for better are not like that. Why aren't we telling those stories instead? Especially when it comes to fiction, we never tell the stories of the people who are approaching this from the perspective, we just want to be treated fucking equal. We don't tell those stories, because those stories, when we do touch on them, are just, this is the reasonable person that will be killed by our big bad, the supremacist. Cheer on the supremacist, everybody. That's not telling our story. That's turning us into you.
And again, it comes back to, we can feel when the hand behind the pen that's trying to represent us isn't wielded by us.
Mhm.
I have seen righteous black anger, and it rarely, if ever, takes the shape of anything resembling Solus. Ever.
Yep.
Ever.
And when it does, we tear them down. Like,
Exactly.
I'm not black, but in people of color terms, we tear them down. Because we know the danger, because we have seen the danger and experienced the danger from a different side. But we're not telling it. Like Solus says, I shall break the world. And as the Inquisition, we say we can secretly help Solus, or we can tear down his very existence and everything he stands for. You have one of two options. And I'm like, so no part of this can we look upon these group of elders and say, hey, you are the reason that we are here because of your hatred of elves. I'm going to fight for elf liberation, and I will tear down Solus, and I will do them both, and you will thank me for it. We can never do that, and we never will. And fuck that. Fuck that whole thing. Sorry, if you're under 18, please leave. Fuck that.
I mean, you don't even get the option to go, look, this motherfucker is about to break everything, and you know what? He's not wrong. Mm-hmm. He's wrong for how he's doing it, but he's not wrong. So we're gonna fix his fucking issue, or I'm gonna let this dog off the leash.
We can't even engage in the equivocating bullshit white people think we do. Like, come on. What depressive shit is that? And it was the same with Anders, wasn't it? Anders blew up a chantry. You have the option to totally engage with what Anders is doing. And to be fair, I think that's not the wrong option. Because, again, nobody he killed were innocents. Or you can say Anders is the problem, tear Anders down. No, at no point, even Orsino turns into a big flesh monster. At no point do we say, hold up, this was all Meredith's fault. There's no point at which we can be like, no. The problem is not Anders or Orsino. The problem is the existence of Templars. Templars and the Chantry caused this. It's just, and that's because no one who looks like us or no one who's experienced oppression like us is writing the stories. Because even if you're queer, that isn't on your face. That's in queer spaces. Or if you dress a certain way, it's not like.
If you're white and queer, you're still white.
If you're white and queer, you're still white. If you're white and a woman, you're still white. It's ultimately, especially like for like cis women who don't understand, they're like 40% of the population. You're not a minority in the way we are. You're marginalized, but not a minority in the way you are. No one's going to say, let's erase women from the planet. There are people out there saying, let's erase black people from the planet. There are people out there saying, let's erase the Asians from the planet. No one's going to say, let's erase women, cis women. And that's what, we're not going to get into turfdom. We're just not going to do that. I'm not going to start something down that train.
I mean, we can encapsulate all that with fuck TERFs.
Fuck TERFs, honestly. It's been exhausting. It's been exhausting seeing like the reduction of gender. It reminds me of colonialism. It's just colonialism.
I mean, more than anything.
It's all under the guise of white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
More than anything, I'm reminded that this is a country that was founded by Puritans. Like
it creeps in a lot.
Like, holy fuck, we're still doing this shit.
We're still having this conversation.
It's always been like, a lot of people bring up, hey, other cultures had other genders too, right? And now we're having to reclaim those back. And yeah, cool. That's because they were forced to the same position that we're being forced. We're literally being colonized when it comes to our gender again, because people cannot stand that we broke the colonial aspects of gender and are challenging it. And I don't know why we're why aren't we calling that out for what it is? It is just white supremacy.
Yeah.
It is the Scooby-Doo villain. You just keep pulling that mask off.
What's behind this? Puritan white supremacy. What's behind this? More Puritan white supremacy?
There's so much of this stuff everywhere.
Why are they still wearing those white hoods? We know what they look like.
Like, you know, and we say didn't want to talk about Terror Split. I'm about to take it here. There are 2 video games out right now.
Oh, yep.
There's Hogwarts Legacy, and there's Atomic Smasher or whatever the fuck.
Atomic Heart.
Or what? Yeah, that's the one. And so Hogwarts Legacy obviously is from J.K. Rowling, and trans folks have just been asking, hey, there's lots of video games, maybe skip this one. And then Atomic Heart comes out, which is full on Russian propaganda, and Ukraine is just like, hey, this directly supports the war effort against us, so maybe don't partake in this video game. And there's just such an outcry from edgy people on TikTok.
I'm gonna buy 5 copies.
I'm gonna buy, I'll buy 6 copies and the deluxe edition. And it's just like,
show me the receipts, bitch.
But it's such a simple test of empathy. It's like, is 40 minutes of a video game really worth it? Like, and I'm not surprised that the answer has been such a thorough yes from so many people. But my issue is just like, where's the line for folks? Like, if your dollar can be directly attributed to the murder of someone in Ukraine, or if your dollar can be directly attributed to the funding of politicians that are going to pass legislation that criminalizes the existence of your fellow American, what won't you lend your dollar to? And it's scary to think about it.
But there's no ethical consumption under capitalism.
Okay, no, let's tackle this because there's 2 arguments here. One, we're never going to get to the question of do I eat dice or not. One, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, and 2, but we're an individual. We shouldn't be responsible for what a business does. And those 2 are related, but they're different, and I want to tackle them both. Because let's bring up Chick-fil-A. Sorry. The majority of what Chick-fil-A spends its money on are missionary organizations, which means that y'all aren't experiencing the vast majority of the homophobia that Chick-fil-A perpetrates. I'll be honest, where my family is right now, Kenya, Tanzania, East Africa, is experiencing the majority of the homophobia that Chick-fil-A perpetrates, where they fund Christian supremacists and, missionary the shit out of, it is not Adam and Eve, it is Adam and Steve. And so that's why I thought originally that people were still okay with buying Chick-fil-A, because ultimately there was some harm being done here, but most of the harm was being done elsewhere. So fuck them, right? When it comes to Hogwarts Legacy, a lot of that harm is being done actively here or actively in Britain. And, again, with Atomic Hearts, Ukraine. But it's Hogwarts Legacy that really made me question my own thoughts here. Because a lot of these people like looking at their trans folks left and right saying, I'm going to raise money for you. I'll cheer you on. But your money doesn't erase the direct dollars that are going into funding hate groups that try to kill them, right? It doesn't undo that, nor does it undo the social capital someone like J.K. Rowling has, because the reason why she can have an essay of hers spouted off in the House of Commons in Britain when they're trying to deal with gender problems, through legislation, and thus having those gender legislation brought right back down again, is because she has social capital, because you buy her shit, because we talk about Harry Potter incessantly in a somewhat positive light. She is considered a representation for our generation because we buy her shit. And that is something, ethical consumption is about how when you buy a tomato, what you're doing inherently is accidentally funding indentured servitude. I know that seems like a wild leap, but that is not true, and The Good Place handled that. Because ultimately, some of these farms are not paying their employees or bringing people who aren't even employees, laborers from across a country to farm those tomatoes for you for like cents, and then send them right back where they can still not have a better life. You're funding that. It's not your fault because it's a tomato. It's a tomato. You're gonna eat it anyway,
Tomato,
right?
tomato.
You need to buy food. You need to eat. You don't need to play a video game.
Tomato.
And when it comes to the person, like, it's not my responsibility to watch out for what business does, what J.K. Rowling does, what Chick-fil-A does. You're right. You're not directly responsible, but it's you who are giving them power. It's society that is giving them power. You as an individual not buying a sandwich or not buying a video game does nothing. You are correct about that. But if we all actually stood up for boycotting, if all of us weren't repeating the same phrase, we as a society would be enough to take that power away from them. But because we as individuals are choosing to engage in it on the sly or openly, we are granting permission for others to do the same, to not support the boycotting, and thus continue on the perpetration of this. This is why you do not cross a picket line when unionization is happening. This is why you don't become a scab, because you doing so grants permission for other people to be scabs, which means that there's going to be so many scabs that there aren't enough people in the union who can stand up, which means they'll continue getting to do what they do.
Yeah, it's like saying like, hey, it's not my fault. And this is why people when I see people in the TTRPG space, try to justify purchasing Hogwarts Legacy, it kind of makes me laugh because, it's like saying, listen, it's not my fault that a dragon burned down the village. All I did was feed the dragon. All I did was make sure the dragon's safe. No, we're supposed to be dragon slayers, and the only weapon we have now is our dollar. And the only way to wield that dollar is to withhold it from the dragon. If there's no way to say, I have fed this dragon, I have supported the dragon, but it's not my fault for what the dragon does. Yes, it is. Like it's like having a dog that just keeps biting your neighbors and going, well, that's not my fault. Yes, it fucking is. It's your dog. You purchased it. Like, you're supporting the dog.
If you cannot afford to train your dog, get crowdfunding to train your dog. But someone's got to train the dog. It's as simple as that. If you want businesses to behave better, we as people need to excise our right to vote. We need to yell and scream. We need to boycott. We need to take our dollar away. We need to do all of it.
And I don't think that the people realize exactly how powerful it is. If you can get WotC and Hasbro to drop to a knee, what can't you do?
Especially because it's not like WotC is the profitable place in Hasbro right now. They're literally where a lot of the money's being made in Magic and Wizards.
Magic is $1 billion franchise right now.
Huge. If you are making them stand down, a major corporation like Hasbro stand down, you can do more than you give yourself credit for as a group. But it takes you encouraging individual action.
And there's one more thing that I kind of want to speak on with this, which is a lot of people go, well, this trans creator said it's okay. Or this trans creator said it's all right. Like, and the thing that I need you to understand is no one community is a monolith, and every community has its Candace Owens. Like,
oh my god.
Listen.
It's like me asking you for a hall pass to say the N-word. It's still not going to fly. The dog's still not going to hunt.
Right. It's just like you have to understand that no matter if you get a large enough community of anyone, Black folks, white folks, brown folks, trans folks, there's always going to be a percentage in that community that's so thoroughly consumed by the white capitalism colonization that we all endure every day, where they're just gonna go, oh, fuck it, like, yeah, sure, whatever, I don't care anymore. And it's you can't take the side of apathy in a crisis of conscience. Apathy is hardly ever going to be the right solution. And if you think that it's not apathy that those folks are preaching, then you're wrong.
Even when it comes, like, because Candace Owens, I think, preaches a bit differently than apathy. She preaches acceptance in the system can only be achieved by engaging in the system in all the ways that they want us to do, and then maybe we'll get a sliver back. Which, by the way, if you get power like that, that power's on loan. The moment you use it for you, it's going to be taken away. But
Woo!
It's
bars.
Oh, listen. When it comes to like being a person of color and engaging in power, even like as a model minority, because let's talk about Asians for a second. It's temporary. It's all on loan. You're getting power from this. It's why people of color can be racist. It's not because you have individual power. No, you don't. It's because society will say, here, you know what? Take a couple bucks, use it to kill that person. You use it for you, you stand up for you, you'll get ostracized. But it's also apathy. It's also giving up. Some of us are just like, you know what? Fuck it. You're going to buy it anyways. Go ahead, buy it. I don't give a shit anymore. I'm done. And that, when it comes to those, because you can't stop the Candace Owenses from Candace Owensing. But when it comes to the people who are in apathy, you, to do right by them, should not do what they're saying. You should tell them that, no, there's no reason to be apathetic. I love you. I respect you. I cheer you on. I'm going to do the right thing anyway to show you that the right thing can still be done. That's how you give us faith in the system back.
And again, it boggles my mind that we have to have this conversation with TTRPG folks or fans of fantasy, because Tolkien gave us the most perfect example of this in Wormtongue. Wormtongue is one of my favorite villains because he's the most realistic. Evil doesn't win by being Sauron, being the obvious evil with the big dark evil armor and the big dark evil mace wiping out good guys. Evil is that one guy that sits next to you and goes, hey, cut a corner. It felt good to cut that corner, didn't you? Didn't it? Hey, cut a couple more corners. You know what? You could be kind, but what if you weren't? You stand up for yourself. You just take care of yourself. And before you realize it, you're just a shell of who you are and who you could be. Like, I know there are tons of racist Lord of the Rings fans. They made that evident when Ring of Powers came out. And I don't understand it, because the moment you get rid of the influences that feed your tendencies to do horrible shit, like, you become so much better, right? And the fact that people can't realize some of the influences that they're listening to are Wormtongue boggles my fucking mind. Yeah. Like what? You can't see that you could be a better, decent, and more effective person by just cutting out some of this shit in your life. It's fucking wild to me. Like,
doing the right thing consistently is hard, so why don't you just cut that corner?
Doing the right thing makes you feel weak, doesn't it? What's strength? Doing nothing. And I mean, how many leaders of ours engage in apathy, in performative apathy, in order to continue to amass power, or at least to have the illusion that they have power? I have a lot of things to say about Justin Trudeau and broken promises up here and up north. But one of the reasons why we still have first past the post here, which is broken as shit, and Anita can attest to that. Oh yeah,
I don't know what that is.
So what happens here? It's kind of like we have the Electoral College, but on a tiny, tiny, tiny scale. To become president, I'm using your terms. To become president, you must be elected Speaker of the House.
Oh.
You must be the leader of your political party, and your political party must have the majority, or as much of a majority as a plurality. Unfortunately, we elect our individual representatives on a per county, I'm doing my best, per riding basis.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you elect seats based upon how many people in one of those seats voted for one party, which means that our We never have the popular vote represented. What we have is a bunch of people in very conservative writings and very liberal writings voting for the liberal or the conservative, and thus representation is never as equal as we want it to be. That situation is fucked.
And it hurts
because
it alienates certain sections of the country, because
exactly
there are certain sections of the country that will traditionally vote very liberal or for more progressive values. So those ridings, especially in the west, in the east with like Ontario and Quebec, usually by the time their votes get tallied, none of the other votes in the west are going to count for much of anything. So the west will feel like their vote doesn't count for much of anything, which means that they will traditionally vote for more conservative politicians that'll have what they think are their best interests at heart, because they will say that they're going to do away with this system to give you more power over these people in the East that only have the people of the East things at heart. And it causes a lot of schism between your East and your West portions of the country.
It also encourages you to engage in apathy, because if you're a person who likes the New Democrats and you're in a riding that does not elect a New Democrat, your vote is never going to go to a New Democrat. It's going to go towards a mid, a nothing, a null. It's the liberal or the conservative who's going to get elected.
Or you're going to end up strategic voting because you don't want to end up with the people. Basically, you're essentially throwing your vote away because you don't want
X.
You don't want X, so we're going to vote for Y instead.
Exactly. And what that means in totality is that a lot of liberal prime ministers stand up and say, okay, we're going to get rid of, while they're trying to get elected, we're going to try and get rid of first past the post. We'll do things by public vote from now on. Seats are going to be signed by public vote. That will never happen, because you can never, once we do that, no one will ever get a majority, 50% of the House ever again.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to get 30%. Everyone has to work with each other. And that is something that when you're elected, especially with the majority, you're never going to do.
And even if you get in with a minority vote, you have to start making deals and alliances with other political parties in order to actually gain that majority and actually have any sort of voting power within the Canadian system. So you'll see in places like British Columbia, where the Conservatives will have like a good majority, or like at least like a vocal like portion of it, you'll have people get very upset because the Liberal Party will start combining their vote with the NDP, and like the Conservatives will get very upset about that because they're like, well, they're just stealing this vote out from under us.
Which makes them vote more conservative.
Basically. Which makes them vote more conservative if it polarizes them.
And ultimately what I'm leading to is that if you're in a position of power and you are doing the thing to keep you in power, it is not going to end up being the right thing, right? It's going to be the apathetic thing. And that's something, oh God, I think I diverted from the point by accident here, but
we started talking Canadian politics. It happens.
Yeah, it does. In the TTRPG industry, we actually see this a lot when it comes to bigger crowds. I don't want to be here and say the LA crowd, but honestly, the LA crowd, if you think of the majority of players in tabletop, with the exception of maybe 5, they're LA folks. And they got there through Geek and Sundry and through College Humor, for the most part. All of them are fantastic. I'm not saying any of them is terrible or secretly terrible, nothing like that. But because of that, all those people who are in those positions of power and who have been backed by big systems are not going to take the risks necessary to change the industry, often because they have grown used to a system in which they hold power, whether they realize it or not. And engaging in a risky behavior like doing the drastic change could make them lose power, lose market share, lose money in their wallets, right? And if you don't have a good savings account, that could literally harm you.
Yeah.
It's again, to bring it all back to the start, especially because we're going to have to wrap up soon. Jeez. To bring it all back to the start, this is the reason why deifying people, why engaging in light and dark thinking is so fucking dangerous. Because that pedestal shines bright and encourages you to stay there until you fall off of it. Which means no one's going to be thinking to do drastic changes. No one is going to be able to know when they are making small missteps that could lead to a greater one. it encourages our system to stay what it is. So when you see shit like Wormwood happening, and your response is, let's talk about the greatest people in the industry. It's understandable, it's relatable, I get what you're going with. But you are trying to find a new guiding star in order so things can remain the same.
Mm-hmm.
You are not engaging in changing the system. And that means the system will continue to perpetuate itself.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, I think that's the perfect cap for that particular conversation.
I am.
Yeah.
This has been a real good conversation, but I would be remiss if we didn't ask some certain questions
Of course.
while we have you here. So, there is a war between the TTRPG community, between those of us who believe that dice are for rolling and only for rolling, and those of us who feel like dice are forbidden candy and should therefore be crunched. We do understand that there is an alternative, which is edible dice, but they reject that because that's crunching and they want to crunch their dice. Mm-hmm. So I have to ask you, what side of this are you on? Are you on the stop the crunch side, or are you on the side of the crunch crew? Now, there are some
the dice defenders.
There are some offshoots of this. There are the cowards who choose to not pick a side.
Be crunch responsible, folks.
Right, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I can cut you off here because I got your answers for you. One, dice are not food, and in fact, most of them aren't made up of stuff that will poison you. Don't eat them. But more importantly, once you consume them, they are lost to you. And those pretty math shards go away to be lost inside of your stomach gastric juices. You don't want that. You want your pretty math rocks in front of you so you can look at them.
Pristine math rocks. Because even if you crunch them, you're going to put teeth marks in them.
Exactly. Right? So do not engage in biting dice. Moreover, physical dice are better than digital dice because algorithms are not entirely random. They're based upon time. There's a lot of math that goes into it. And physical dice have numerous places in which randomization can occur, both in the dice itself, but also in how you roll them with your hand or a dice tower. And thus, physical dice must be treasured at all costs. Digital dice make you blame Roll20, D&D Beyond, Google. Physical dice, you only get to blame the dice on your table and how you rolled them, which means it feels
and you
more
can
fair.
Put them in jail.
You can
put them in jail.
I have a new take. Are y'all ready?
Sure.
There's no ethical crunching under capitalism. We can't.
Cut a mic. Cut the mic right now.
Nope.
Yeah, get the mic.
Can't. This is my show. I'm running tech. You can't do it. There's no ethical crunching under capitalism. We can't afford eggs right now. You think you can afford shiny math rocks? Save your dice.
Save your dice from being crunched.
Save your dice. Save your teeth. I'm getting bombed. I'm being attacked. Help, I'm being oppressed.
You know what? You're correct. There is no safe thing as responsible crunching. Ha.
I should have grabbed my lightsaber. I wasn't fast on the draw.
I'm never going to get another job after this. That's what I'm learning.
Can you ban me? Ban this streamer.
I shall be banned forever from this system. I mean, look, I will say this. I am a very political person. I do not hide my political nature. However, if you choose to work with me and pay me money, you're going to get like a side of me that is understanding and speaks from your perspective. I will have to go soon.
Yes.
Very soon.
Okay.
Yeah,
so last, do we have time for 2 questions?
Go ahead.
All right. Last 2 questions.
Rapid fire.
You are the God Emperor of the TTRPG space. You can choose any 3 things, and the space has to adhere to them. They could be anything from like making wizards disappear to like giving everybody in the space $1 billion. What do you choose to do?
Cool. Every project has a creative lead and a sensitivity lead. 2.
I like it.
Yeah. 2. all tables must involve a diversity that is representative of the audience you wish to have. In other words, like 3/5 should be POC, you know, and there should be marginalized genders at the table and queer people if you want an audience made up of those groups. And three, no more light and dark. No more not acknowledging the inherent problems in the things that we are fans of. What's your last question?
Last question. If you've been in the TTRPG space for long enough, you've probably had the displeasure of playing with a bad guy. A bad guy is a veritable black hole of fun at the table. Somebody, if they were yeeted into the sun, your enjoyment of the experience would increase tenfold. So, do you have a that guy story for us?
For you, I have several, and that's the thing. There's a billion and one true that guys that will make your experience at one table terrible. But more so than that, there is the choice of apathy that creates that guys out of our community. It turns our community into one that eats itself and one that harms itself, and makes people like me feel unsafe at every table, whether there's a that guy or not a that guy included. So my story is this. I've been off the internet. I've been off of Twitter. I've secretly been on to retweet a couple things, once or twice, in the past couple days, because of how people are continuing to support bad actors that harm me, people like me, and moreover, trigger the shit out of me. That's my that guy. It's us. We all need to do a little bit better to stop being that guy.
You just came in with bars today, and I fucking love it.
I'm here for it. There is one more thing we have to do because we have been getting into darker topics. We need to do our spotlight, and then we'll end on a little bit more of a nice note. So who is someone in the space right now that you would like to shine a little light on, you think does not get the appreciation that they deserve? And we're going to do this before I run out there and start fighting noir with lightsabers.
There are so many. I'm a big fan of NoirEnigma and Joy Valentine's current podcast, Dungeons & Dragons, and everything I do is an audition to be considered as one of their guests. That is my spotlight today.
We're actually going to have our first guest on for next week's podcast. We've got, oh my God, I'm spacing on the name. But they broke the OGL story. Linda, there you go. Kobega. It's Kodega, but we call them Kobega. And then after that, expect a DM, my friend. I just have to figure out how I'm going to configure all that for the podcast. But it's always a pleasure talking to you. This has been one of my favorite ones to do in a while. So hell yeah. You just have such a fucking way with words. Oh my God. This is why you're a writer. Oh
no, not you two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna shine some light on Norden right now because he's an incredible writer, a sensitivity consultant, and you should definitely hire him for things. Anyways, that's me.
That said, I think that's been the episode, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. I've been one of your hosts, NoirEnigma. You can find me all over the internet as the NoirEnigma. That's Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. Also, you can...
No, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go.
Also, you can find me every Friday on Table Takes, on Gen Con TV. Saturday mornings, you can find me right here. On Monday, you can find me over on Cryptic Studios, where we're doing Star Trek Perseverance. It's been really, really, really fun. And I've got some other things coming up. So check out my website, TheNoirEnigma.com. I've got merch there. Please buy it. I'm poor. I'm gonna be dropping a new piece of merch. Actually, it is my stage directions. I've had a few people asking about those. It's going to be a poster with my personal safety tools as well as the XNO system. So be on the lookout for that.
And I've been your other host, Anita, she, they pronouns. You can find me everywhere at Panita or at Critical Misses. I'm a TTRPG streamer, graphic designer, producer, cat person about the space, I guess, because I've got cat ears on today. And you can find me here Saturdays for Morning Ritual. I believe our guest next week is Mare, Archmage of Dice, is going to chat with us.
You're a huge fan, Mare.
And you can also find me Sundays on Pluto Cleric's channel for... Oh, no, Mare is our guest. You can find me Sundays for a Starfinder game called The Weird Frontier. And I play a little old lady who joined a cult and then got superpowers. Thursdays you can find me over on Cyberpunk Uncensored for a Star Trek Adventures game called Flight Beyond the Veil. And that's it. That's me. Norton, who are you?
Yay, hi.
Where can folks find you? And what are you doing? Do you have anything to plug?
My name is Nordine Likadir. My pronouns are he, him. You can catch me online all over the interwebs at WerewolfFeels, wherever werewolves can be found. And we can be found in more places than you think. If you want more information about my projects, check out nordinealikadir.card with 2 R's.co. I'm working on the actual website. And I will be at PAX East the end of March. Please check out the Atom List, which is a great Starfinder podcast / actual play. Beyond that, that's roughly it for now. But, keep in touch because I have more plans for the future. Thank you all for having me. It has been a wonder, as it always is.
Hell yeah. It's always good to have you on here. We're going to go on a raid. Let me just get my dashboard up so I can actually send us somewhere because I don't know who's around and online at the moment. Let's go send some love over to Omnis. He's live right now playing a strategy game. We'll send some love over in that direction. Thank you all so much for stopping by and hanging out with us. And once again, we'll talk to you soon. But for now, the ritual concluded. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
All right, we're clear.
Okay.